really get into it and obsess about it. But that obsessiveness then translates into persisting through kind of hard times and challenges, and then also eventually getting to a point where they can achieve something that's really, really pretty exceptional.
That's so interesting. So I mean, so the thought here then is, when I ask why evolutionarily would an awkward person, even make it, it's because there are huge advantages. It's not just social. That there are huge advantages, that we need the awkward people in our society because of their obsession, and I assume that they're the observers.
So yeah, the awkward person can be super valuable because they are seeing the world in a different kind of way, and they are seeing it in this more bottom-up kind of way. And what happens then is you might put those pieces together in a way that nobody else would. And that can lead to creativity or innovation. And that gives diversity to a group's thinking, but can also then, of course, right, if we're talking about evolution, add resources because they'll see new ways or better ways to do things.
Yeah, this is so interesting. And it also explains the self-flagellation and the insecurity that sometimes come from being awkward, is because we are equally hyper-focused on ourselves, and because we actually have a means of comparison, right? Like, I've been watching other people and I know how they conduct themselves, and I'm not conducting myself that way. I've observed the socially fluent and I'm being socially unfluent. And I'm aware of that. And that, I think, is the source of the, unfortunately, a self even more awkwardness.
Yeah, that's right. Trying to overcome the previously awkward thing sometimes leads to even a more awkward situation.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, I think it's worth parsing out, which is there's no correlation, or I'm assuming there's no correlation between socially awkward and insecure.
Yes, you're exactly right. So there doesn't have to be a correlation between your self-esteem and you being socially awkward. And if you just have some self-awareness about it, and you're just kind of people kind of appreciate the straightforwardness. Yeah, it's like, oh, well, that actually took a little extra confidence to come in hot with, hey, I'm an awkward person, and I think people kind of appreciate that. Yeah. So, but there are folks who it takes a while sometimes, and so like with teenagers, for example. They might have a bit of a lower self-esteem, and it's kind of understandable because they are struggling more, and there's, in some instances, like the awkward kids getting picked on or something, which doesn't help. But yeah, the ideal, Simon, would be to get to where you're at, to where, you just have good self-awareness and you own it.
Oh, that's a great question, which is all little kids have no awkwardness. Like, little kids have no inhibitions, no awkwardness. They see the world through the rosiest color lenses, and then adolescence sets in and all the awkwardness shows up. We look awkward, we sound awkward, we act awkward, and then for some of us, the awkwardness remains at higher levels, and for some of us, it dilutes and dissipates. The question I have is why do we get awkward in adolescence at all? Like, if we weren't awkward as little kids, why the transition into awkwardness, where there's more awkwardness amongst adolescent kids than not?
There's a couple things there, So awkward moments are just deviations from relatively minor social expectations. Because if it's a violation of a major expectation, like trust, for example, then you're in a different realm of emotional reaction to that. An unzipped zipper or spinach in your front teeth, not a big deal, really, right? But those are certainly awkward kinds of moments. What happens when you get to adolescence is things obviously start to change very quickly. So that could be physical kind of stuff, but also mentally you get this surge of abstract reasoning, and you're interested in popularity and abstract things like that. Mm-hmm. And so there's all these new expectations. All of a sudden I got to be fashionable. All of a sudden I'm much shorter than everybody else who's going through their growth spurt. There's all these things where there's a gap between expectations and your ability to meet those social expectations. And I think that's why in junior high school, for example, It just feels awkward for a lot of folks.
I'm loving this. So what I love about this, which is awkwardness you're defining, and I love this definition, which is it's not quite meeting a social expectation, right? And so I'll tell you a strategy that I've learned that has been extremely beneficial to me, right? Because to your point, in a social interaction, in a bar, at a party, at all these things, there's an expectation of sociability and some degree of social fluency that an awkward person really struggles with. The small talk, all of that stuff, which I do. And so one strategy is to really, 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 really work hard on your social fluency so you can be good in those environments. The strategy that I've adopted is to avoid those environments. Which is I go into, but your point about meeting social expectations, which is I go into environments where the social expectations are different, right? So an environment where there's a small group of people, a dinner table with 2 or 3 people has a different social expectation than a party or a bar or a social event, and you can sit quietly at a table for quite much longer without being viewed as awkward, or you can interact now and then or allow somebody else to carry the conversation without being awkward. So what I really like is understanding what the expectations are. I think we should all work harder to be better versions of ourselves and be prepared for all scenarios, of course, but there's something to be said for not beating yourself up when you're bad in a place where the expectations are one. You can change where the expectations are and put yourself in a place where you're just going to be naturally better.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, love that. Love that point. Love that strategy, because some of the unhelpful advice I hear folks give to awkward people is, well, just put yourself out there. Just go to the party, just go to the club, go to the nightmare scenario where you're not going to do well, basically. And what you're saying is, hey, I'm going to try to set myself up for success by putting myself in social environments where I can thrive and it's better suited to my preferences and my skills. So yeah, I absolutely love that. I mean, one of the things I've just observed in our short interaction here is, like, you're a naturally curious person. And in a smaller group setting with 1 or 2 people, and that would be the kind of trait that would really thrive, because you'd be, hey, tell me more about this thing that you're thinking about or that you're interested in, which is really the key to a great social interaction, period. Right. And so, by you putting yourself in the ideal environment, that's really one of the best things you can do.
I'm gaming the system.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And you've also given yourself permission to let go of, kind of forcing yourself to be in situations that you don't enjoy or that aren't good for you.
And, if there's loud music and I can't actually have a conversation, I literally shut down. I can't do it. I'll walk into a place, and if the music is too loud for me to engage with somebody, I will leave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's not going to go well.
There's just nothing I can do in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm the same
and
way.
So these little shortcuts to, I can just walk into a space, and if it's not too loud, even if it's a social environment, I'll figure it out. But if it's extremely loud, I'm gone.
No, yeah. And it sounds like, too, like, you're interested in getting the other person talking, which is one of the things I didn't say is the other person talks 2/3 of the time, you talk 1/3 of the time. They will always walk away thinking you're the coolest, nicest dude around, because they got to talk about themselves and you were genuinely interested in what they had to say. So I think sometimes awkward people put the pressure on themselves to perform, but it's actually really getting the other person to perform, which sounds like your mindset in these interactions.
When it works. Sometimes I think I have to perform, and that's when it falls flat.
Yeah. No, sometimes you get 2 awkward people, and the other awkward person's that real super shy type.
That's happened to me, where I've seen in a social environment where there's lots of people, party, club, whatever, and there's one guy standing on the side, like, I know he's struggling, I know he feels alone, I know he doesn't know what he's doing, and so I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna try and sort of like throw this poor guy a lifeline. I've been there, and I'll walk up and again, because I'm complete crap at small talk, I'll walk up and be like, how you doing?
Yeah.
You okay? And he'll go, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then the 2 of us stand there in complete silence.
Yeah, looking out the dance floor.
You know, awkward plus awkward is really awkward. And we're both feeling it until one of us goes, okay, and just walks away.
I know.
I've been on the receiving end of that, and I've sometimes been on the giving end of that. But an awkward person will struggle to rescue an awkward person.
Yeah, now you're both drowning.
Yeah, it's not a good scenario. Yeah. All right, so now we've talked about what we awkwards can learn from socially fluent people and how we can better improve for all the good reasons. You know, it's helpful to be socially fluent in a social world. What can socially fluent people learn from awkward people?
One of the things I think for folks to know in general is that socially awkward people are just as kind. They are just as trustworthy. They have all the stuff that actually really matters in a close relationship. Awkward people have. And I think one of the things that's bonus is that awkward people a lot of times have an empathy for what it's like to be misunderstood, or they have an empathy for what it's like to struggle in a interpersonal situation. And one of the things I just really warms my heart, I guess, is to see the awkward person, you know, notice somebody who's struggling, whereas the socially fluent person might not, because they're, you know, not paying attention to some of the details. One of the things I love is, you know, the awkward person taking the time to really help folks along who might be struggling. And so I think one of the things socially fluent people can learn from awkward folks is to slow down sometimes and think about, hey, is everyone doing well here, and what can I do to be helpful? I think one of the other things that awkward people do well, that socially fluent people oftentimes can learn something from, is just their determination and their persistence. And, you know, I love to, when I'm talking to an awkward person and I find that thing that they're passionate about and that they're obsessed about, I just love hearing about their passion for it, but I also love hearing how they work on it. Yeah. And there's this discipline that can sometimes tip into rigidity, but there's this discipline and there's this persistence, especially through difficult parts, that I think is really admirable.
Yeah. So interesting. Can you tell me a specific story about something you were involved in over the course of your professional career? You know, a project you were involved in, something like that. It doesn't matter if it was commercially successful, or however you want to define that. But something that you absolutely loved being a part of, that if every one of your projects or every one of your research, you know, projects was like this one thing, you'd be the happiest person alive.
That's a great question. I guess I haven't really thought about that much. I think, I had a recent experience. I guess I was working with a psychedelic pharmaceutical company, and they wanted to build this technology tool to understand why psychedelics seem to work for things like depression or addiction and other things. And one of the things I loved about that environment is the guy I worked with most closely was the chief technology officer. And he was one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. And he only wanted to meet every 2 weeks, which I liked. And he'd always start with the same question, which just exemplifies what I think I enjoyed about the situation. He would always say, "Hey, Ty, what can I do to remove the barriers to let you do your best possible work?" And that was really all he was interested in doing. And I think the times I've really loved whatever it is I'm doing, whether it's something about social awkwardness or a technology tool or whatever it might be, is I just love the problem. You know, I just love a big, nasty problem. And I love obsessing then about figuring out the details of that and, you know, trying to come up with something that's maybe creative or different. And I think finding the freedom to do that in this modern age is pretty hard to do.
Yeah. Give me an early specific happy childhood memory. Not like we went to my grandparents every weekend. That's something specific I can relive with you.
Yeah. Oh, I was pretty lucky. You know, I had a pretty happy childhood. I guess the thing that comes to mind right now